Hello, my name is Elian Villagrán, and today I'll be presenting Ag feeds us but also kills us. Why is this important? Well, in 2018, 209 million pounds of active ingredients found in pesticides were applied in California. And this is a big stat, but what does it mean? It means that there's too much pesticides being applied. And it's affecting the safety of the workers that are working in these fields in surrounding areas such as Salinas, um, and in other counties such as Tulare County, Fresno County, basically anywhere that just has a lot of agricultural activity. And so also about half of the pesticides applied in the Monterey region are banned in at least half a dozen countries in the world. So it raises the question, do we want these um, banned substances being applied in our environment? As the thing is, not only does it affect the workers that are working in the areas, but the pesticide drift ends up reaching us and it causes a lot of health risks, which I'll be discussing later. And another stat that reflects that its effect to the environment is that Fresno County consistently fails to meet ozone pollution regulations um, by a landslide. So this affects us directly, especially since we're people that live in Monterey County, and there's a lot of problems with the pesticides that are being applied in this state. And so a term that arose from the articles that I read was environmental racism. And so what does this mean? Does it mean the plants are calling us racial slurs? No, it means that communities of color are disproportionately burdened with health hazards and practices that force them to live in proximity to sources of toxic waste, such as sewage, works, mines, etc. In this case, the toxic waste is um, the pesticides being applied. And so one of the pesticides that was being applied or at least was 3-dichloropropane, also known as Telone. And also one other pesticide was that was being applied but got banned recently was methyl bromide. And so why is this a problem? It's just bad. It's toxic, and as I will discuss earlier, it's just a lot of health risks involved, and the reason why they were banned. So pesticide pollution is poorly burden minorities. In this case, yes, Salinas is an area that is in charge of a lot of land that leads to a big production of different crops in the state. And also Fresno County, Tulare County, um, the majority of Fresno's population is Hispanic, and they're constantly rated with high ozone pollution and exposure. And also, rural communities are the places in the state that are affected by that, not affected by, but like there's the most amount of pesticides are being dumped in these areas. So it raises the question, um, are they abusing rural communities because one, they probably aren't aware and they don't know what's happening. Well, they do know what's happening, but they may not have as much of a say because, well, it's just a small town. So there's not much pressure being put on the industry as a whole. And well, going back to the main question, yes, pesticide pollution does disproportionately burn minorities. As where these pesticides are being applied, there's a large Hispanic population. Should agencies bow down to pressure? Um, well, this is the obvious answer in terms of human rights. No, but if we look on the economic side for these companies, they want to make the most amount of profit possible. Basically, what I mean by agencies is the agencies that regulate these pesticides are known to have just different standards, as there's at least 12 in California that regulate pesticides. And so there has been progress made, with the bans, but there's a lack of monitoring and advancement that should be made for such a big issue. But it goes to raise another question, which is, do the farm workers and surrounding communities deserve this? Well, the obvious answer when it comes to human rights and, well, workers' rights is no. They do not deserve to be exposed by pesticides as they are also working a physically demanding job. Apart from that point, they just don't deserve to be exposed to in general. toxic substances just to create a larger profit is not fair, especially when it comes to just abuse to certain communities at the sake for the sake of just profit. And as analysis of the stakeholders, there's us. We're affected by this as we eat the food that's being provided by the ag industry, and we're in areas that either get pesticide drift or we're just close to the pesticides that are being applied. And the ag companies are an obvious stakeholder as they gain from the pesticides being applied. They gain from the workers that are working. Pesticide regulators as well. Um, their livelihood is based on whether, um, well, they're basically they rely on ag. They're making money from this as they're deciding who gets not who gets, but like the regulations behind the pesticides and the locals that are either working, so this could include workers or the people in surrounding communities. More affected by this as ag is a large producer of economic growth in the county and the state, and we also eat from the foods that are being applied with pesticides. And the government can decide to regulate or intervene, ban certain substances from being applied. Um, and that is it for the economic stakeholders. Stakeholders, I mean, apologies. And as for the studies that are being done, that were done on the pesticide exposure, so a 1999, I believe, study that has gone on for 24 or 22 years or so, called Chamacos, found that prenatal exposure to certain pesticides is strongly linked to lower IQ and learning disabilities. Chamacos is also an acronym for Center for the Health Assessment of Mothers and Children of Salinas. So this is a study that was done specifically in Salinas. And another fact is that chamacos is a term to describe children in Mexican Spanish. So this is also affecting, oh, as the name states, kids. So in the 22 years since the study began, she and her colleagues have found that children whose mothers had higher levels of pesticide in their bodies had poor verbal skills and lower IQ scores. By the time the children reached school age, they had more ADHD type behaviors, more autism type behaviors, and decreased brain activation on brain imaging scans. So it goes to show that these children who are being exposed simply in the womb, just being in the womb, they're already being exposed to these pesticides, and their futures are being decided by ag companies and pesticide regulators that are trying to make a lot more money. So um, this goes to affect not only the people that are currently in the surrounding communities, but the future children that are in the surrounding communities. And this is just a huge issue that can touch many topics, such as um, education and just so many. I'm not going to get into it. So solutions. We can advocate for pesticides to be banned. There's currently a nonprofit in Salinas called California Pesticide Reform. They have advocated and protested in many surrounding cities that um, are involved in ag, like Watsonville. Even in Salinas, they protested, and they've also gone to the capital in Sacramento to protest. I believe they were successful in banning one pesticide, along with help of others protesting with them in Sacramento. But despite this, they've had other protests go unsuccessful. And the fact is that despite these efforts to ban pesticides that are affecting people around us, not a lot of advancement is being made. Another fact that goes to show that not much advancement is being made is that before the pandemic, there were a lot of efforts to monitor exactly how much pesticides are being applied across counties in California. There was about 8 drones that were set up to monitor the amount of pesticides that were being applied. But since the pandemic, funding has decreased, and so there's only about 3 or 4 now that are regulating the pesticide drift and amount of pesticides being applied. So it goes to show that um, there is not much pressure for these pesticide regulation agencies to keep monitoring because, well, there's the money is being put elsewhere. And so we could also report violations of workers and hold ag industry accountable. By report violations of workers, I just mean there's health safety violations, well, pesticides, but apart from that, if the workers are just being worked too hard, this could cause a chain effect. If we just simply report problems that are going on, there could also be more investigations on other problems going on, such as the pesticide exposure. So just holding these ag industries accountable um, will end up leading to more solutions in the future, hopefully. And we could also advocate for better monitoring. Um, as I said earlier, there's not that much monitoring being done due to the fact that funding has decreased, but there are hopes for it to come back in the future. And as for another solution, we could simply just do more research on natural predators. And by we, I just mean other advocates or the ag industry and federal agencies and regulators that are in charge of deciding what pesticides are being applied and the management of ag. And by natural predators, I mean aphids or other animals that can do the same job that pesticides do, except they're just not um, putting toxic waste into our air and our children. So that concludes my presentation.